The moment she raised her glass to toast her secretary, on my birthday, I stopped being her husband and became her consequence. I stood near the edge of the ballroom, a forgotten fixture in a room I helped build. My name's Ethan Cross, and tonight is my 35th birthday, not that anyone in this crystal-drenched crowd gave a damn. Especially not Amelia. Especially not my wife. She wore silver. Of course she did. It matched her ring and her ambition. Amelia Walsh, CEO of Novacore Solutions, Queen of Disruption, Darling of Tech Media. And somewhere in the crowd, shoulder to shoulder with investors and socialites, stood Connor Vale, her secretary, her rising star, well, I was done pretending not to see it. She tapped her glass. The clinking echoed through the hush, commanding more attention than I'd ever been given in the past 2 years. To Connor, she said, smiling that bright, PR-trained smile. For your tireless work, loyalty, and brilliance. You've carried this quarter on your back. I'm endlessly grateful. The crowd applauded. I watched. Quiet. Distant. Detached. My birthday, she had said, would be folded into the celebration. What she meant was it would be erased. Just like I had been. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was a message. A public erasure, in front of her colleagues, in front of me. And that's when I knew. The time for doubt was over. The sleepless nights, the questioning, the searching for signs of affection, I'd buried myself in hope for too long. But tonight? Tonight, she did me a favor. In the pocket of my tailored navy jacket was an envelope. Inside it, my voice, my boundary, my justice. Let her toast him. Let her shine. Because when the final glass is raised, when the music slows and the cameras flash, I'll walk up, smile like nothing's wrong, and hand her the divorce papers with the same elegance she used to discard me. Happy birthday to me. They say you don't notice the water boiling when you're inside the pot. I used to think that was just a cliché. Now, I know it's a warning dressed as a metaphor. Because when you're in love, when you're really in it, your tolerance for pain disguises itself as patience. And I had a lot of patience for Amelia. Amelia Walsh. My wife. My queen. My storm. When I met her, she was a force of nature wrapped in a black blazer and red lipstick. We crossed paths at a tech networking event in Seattle. She was talking to 3 investors at once, barely 5 feet tall in heels, and yet they all leaned toward her like sunflowers following the sun. I was standing at the bar, watching her. Not like a creep, but like someone watching gravity in action. I was drawn in before she ever looked my way. She approached me first. You look bored, she said. Or intelligent. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. That was her. Sharp tongue, sharper mind. I told her I was a creative strategist who hated crowds and loved clean typography. She said she was building a security software company that would one day make data breaches feel like ancient history. We ended up skipping the rest of the conference and sitting in a coffee shop until 2 a.m., scribbling app ideas on napkins and laughing about things neither of us remember anymore. I fell in love with Amelia the way people fall asleep, slowly, then all at once. At first, it was about support. Encouragement. Partnership. She made me feel like I mattered. And I made her feel grounded, like someone cared more about her heart than her resume. But somewhere along the way, her hunger for success swallowed the space we shared. Amelia became a CEO. I became her +1. Not at first. She still kissed me goodnight, still asked for my input on pitch decks, still laughed at my dry jokes. But the intimacy faded gradually, like light in a room where someone keeps dimming the switch without you noticing. Until one day, I realized I didn't remember the last time she had touched me without checking her phone. And then came Connor. Connor Vale was hired as her executive assistant 2 years ago. Fresh out of grad school, well-groomed, always conveniently available. He had the charm of someone who knew how to say just enough without saying anything at all. I wanted to like him. I tried. He even shook my hand too hard the first time we met, maybe a little threatened, maybe trying to mark his territory. I should have listened to my gut. At first, it was harmless. Amelia needed help organizing her insane schedule. Connor was efficient. Reliable. Too reliable. He started working late. Then started working weekends. Then started accompanying her on urgent business trips that never showed up in her calendar app. I noticed the silence. The way she locked her phone when I entered a room. The way she laughed too quickly when Connor texted. I wanted to believe it was nothing. Wanted so badly to keep the fantasy of us alive. But doubt is a quiet rot. It grows in the cracks, until one day, everything falls apart. I wasn't the jealous type. I was the watchful type. And what I saw made me ashamed, not of her, but of myself, for letting it get this far. For letting my love turn into tolerance. For sitting at a table where I was no longer being served. There was a time when Amelia called me her anchor. Said I kept her from spinning out. But anchors can also become burdens to people chasing the wind. And that's what she did, chased something younger, more eager, more pliable. Not better. Just easier to impress. Connor never looked me in the eye again after that night at the board dinner when I caught him brushing something off her shoulder. Intimate. Familiar. A gesture too practiced to be innocent. I could have confronted him. Her. I could have begged, screamed, demanded the truth. But I didn't. I chose silence. Because silence buys time. And time lets you plan. And I planned. While she climbed stages and posed for magazines, I studied the fine print of our marriage. I met with lawyers. I journaled until my hands ached. I waited. Waited for the moment her mask would slip in public. The moment when the world she curated would show its cracks. That moment was my birthday. And I was done being invisible. When I first met Amelia, she wasn't a CEO. She was a force of raw ambition in an overpriced coffee shop, her laptop covered in sticky notes and her hair in a messy bun that didn't hide the spark in her eyes. I was 2 years into an advertising job I was already tired of, and she was pitching a cybersecurity concept to a VC who kept glancing at his watch. I remember thinking, she's fire trying to learn how to behave like wood. That same night, she told me I was the first person who looked at her like a person, not a pitch deck. That's how it began. No games. Just long nights spent on folding chairs in her one-bedroom apartment, eating Thai takeout while she wrote code and I scribbled out slogan ideas. She used to say I gave her oxygen. I used to say she gave me direction. We built everything from scratch, her company, our life, our ridiculous habit of celebrating every minor win like it was a lottery. When she landed her first angel investor, we danced barefoot in our living room until midnight. When we got engaged, we skipped the ring and designed matching tattoos instead. 2 minimal arrows pointing in the same direction. Hers on her ribcage. Mine on my forearm. So we don't forget, she had whispered. For a while, it worked. I didn't mind her working until 3 a.m. or canceling plans because she had to prepare for a demo. I was proud of her. Genuinely. I loved telling people, my wife's a tech founder. She's changing the world. That sentence used to feel like sunlight in my mouth. But somewhere between Series A and Forbes Under 40, something shifted. She didn't mean to leave me behind, not intentionally, anyway. But when you climb fast enough, you start mistaking altitude for clarity. Amelia began dressing sharper, speaking differently, laughing like she was auditioning for a TED Talk. And Connor? He became her new sidekick. Always there. Always eager. Always younger. I remember the first time she canceled our anniversary dinner because Connor and I are pitching late. I told myself it was just business. Then came the second missed dinner. Then the forgotten birthday. The quiet moments grew louder. I adapted. Or tried to. I became a consultant so I could work from home, make sure dinner was warm, the wine stocked, and the house clean. I thought if I just kept things steady, she'd notice. That she'd come back down to earth for a little while. But love, I've learned, doesn't survive on effort alone. It needs reciprocity. Presence. That unspoken kind of seeing. She stopped seeing me. What stung most wasn't the distance. It was the ease with which she accepted it. She started talking to me like I was an assistant. Giving me updates about her schedule instead of having conversations. Sharing news about Connor's ideas like I was supposed to be impressed. Sometimes I caught her texting at dinner, smiling at her phone, and I knew. I just knew. But I wasn't ready to confront it. Not then. I still loved her. Still wanted her to remember who we were. So I doubled down. More effort. More patience. More pretending that I was okay. Until one day, I realized I wasn't waiting for her to come back to me, I was waiting for me to come back to me. Because somewhere in her climb, I stopped existing. I had become an accessory in my own life. Background to someone else's story. I wasn't Ethan anymore. I was Amelia's husband. It wasn't rage that filled me. It wasn't jealousy, even. It was this quiet ache, like standing in a house you built and realizing the foundation's gone. You can't scream it back into place. You just have to walk out. And that's when I started planning. Not out of spite. Not even revenge. Just clarity. I loved her. I really did. But I loved myself more when I finally remembered how. I always thought betrayal would come loud. Shouting. Doors slamming. Tears soaking pillowcases and accusations fired like bullets in a war zone neither of us asked to be born into. But the truth? Betrayal came quietly. It came tucked in the inside pocket of my wife's Burberry trench coat, neatly folded, almost respectful. A receipt. Black ink on white paper. The kind you barely look at before throwing away. Except I looked. God help me, I looked. It was a checkout slip from the Astrid Hotel, downtown, boutique, painfully elegant, the kind of place you only book for moments you want to remember. 2 nights. Executive suite. Billed under, Walsh Incorporated. Corporate expense. The date, last month. Amelia was supposed to be at a women's leadership retreat in Sonoma. I reread the signature scrawled at the bottom, C. Vale. Connor. It didn't hit me like a truck. It didn't even hit me like a shove. It was more like the ground tilted, and I had to pretend I still knew how to stand. I sat on the edge of our bed, the receipt crumpled in my hand like a question I didn't know how to ask. Outside, the rain traced lazy paths down the glass windows, like it couldn't be bothered to fall all the way. She came home hours later, casual and humming. I watched her shrug off her coat, toss her heels aside. I didn't say a word. She kissed my cheek. Hey, love. I nodded. Welcome home. My voice didn't shake. That scared me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why I wasn't enough. Wanted to say, I gave up job offers in New York, passed on promotions, shaped my entire career around you, and you repay me with this. But the words didn't come. Because something colder took their place. Clarity. See, heartbreak's tricky. It disguises itself as confusion first. You think if you just gather enough evidence, cross-reference behavior and memory, you'll find a version of the story that makes it less cruel. But I didn't need more evidence. I had everything I needed. It wasn't just the receipt. It was the months leading up to it, weeks of her brushing me off, rescheduling dinner dates, sleeping with her phone face down. The way she spoke to Connor, effortless, light, like she was allowed to be soft around him in a way she hadn't been with me in years. It was the dinner party where she gushed about his work ethic and forgot to mention mine. The accidental, overnight work trips. The way he called her Amelia, while I stuck with love or babe, like a man clinging to old dialects of a dying language. So I did what I never imagined I would. I opened a folder on my laptop I had started months ago, half-jokingly. It was called Exit Strategy. At first, it was just budgeting spreadsheets in case I ever left. But lately, I'd been adding more. Notes. Photos. Timelines. I reached out to Daniel, an old friend from college who had become a divorce attorney. I told him I wasn't sure yet, but I needed to know what I was entitled to if things ended. We talked about the prenup. Back when Amelia and I married, I was the one who pushed for it. She had just received a huge investment round. I didn't want her worrying about gold-digging accusations or investor doubt. I loved her. Fully. Stupidly. Daniel explained the infidelity clause. Any evidence of cheating could activate a financial penalty. A buyout clause. $3 million. But it wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. I spent the next few weeks gathering quiet ammunition. Calendar overlaps. Hotel bookings. A voice note where she told Connor, "I wish I could just spend every weekend like that with you." Screenshots of texts where she called him, her oxygen. I didn't confront her. Instead, I became a ghost in my own house. Polite. Present. Empty. We still had breakfast together. She still kissed my temple. But I stopped investing. Stopped hoping. I was already gone. Just hadn't announced the funeral yet. The moment I knew I'd follow through was a Tuesday night. She came home, drenched from the rain. I had lit candles, trying to salvage one last memory. She didn't notice them. Just kicked off her heels and said, "Connor thinks we should move the product launch earlier. He's smart like that." I stared at her. Yeah. He's brilliant. She didn't catch the sarcasm. She rarely caught me anymore. That night, I emailed Daniel, "Proceed." The day of the party came faster than expected. It was supposed to be my birthday celebration. That's what Amelia had called it. A dual event, she said. A little toast for your big day, plus a corporate celebration. It wasn't about me. I knew that. It was about Connor. I arrived at the venue an hour early, the divorce envelope heavy in my jacket pocket. I had printed 2 copies. One for Amelia. One for me. I shook hands. Smile for photos. Accepted birthday wishes from people who didn't even know me. Then, from across the ballroom, I saw her, Amelia. Stunning, radiant, magnetic. And next to her, like a shadow with a smirk, was Connor. He whispered something to her. She laughed, not the laugh she used on stage. The real one. The one I hadn't heard since our honeymoon in Spain. That was it. That's when my heart stopped breaking and started rebuilding with steel instead of flesh. When she raised a glass and said, "To Connor, who's been the rock behind our latest triumph," and didn't even glance at me, I reached into my jacket. The envelope felt cool against my skin. I stood up. And for the first time in 2 years, I finally felt alive. After I found that hotel receipt, something inside me just stopped. It was like the final snap of a cable that had been pulled too tight for too long. I sat on the edge of our California king bed, staring at Amelia's coat draped over the chair. That receipt had slipped out like a confession. 2 nights. Premium suite. Her name. Connor's initials. Charged her company. I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't even curse. I just felt hollow. I folded the paper neatly, slid it into my desk drawer like it was part of some growing file, because it was, and then I stood in the silence of our penthouse and realized how loud my loneliness had become. That night, she came home late. Lipstick perfect, not a hair out of place. She smelled like cinnamon and executive privilege. Pitch went well, she said absently, tossing her heels by the door. I just nodded. Glad to hear. She didn't notice the pause in my voice. She didn't ask how my day was. She hadn't, in weeks. I lay beside her that night, her body turned away, as always. The ceiling felt like a stranger staring back at me. The next morning, I started disappearing. I became a ghost with good manners. I still brewed her favorite coffee, almond milk, 2 sugars. But I stopped joining her at the table. I stopped sending her lunch texts. Stopped waiting for her to come home. I started walking again. 4 hours. Through neighborhoods where no one knew my name. I found a small cafe near the marina, ordered black coffee I didn't even like, and scribbled in my journal until my hand cramped. I filled pages with questions she'd never answer. Memories I didn't trust anymore. I wrote down how the betrayal made me feel, replaceable, small, stupid. But most of all, invisible. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want advice. I just wanted quiet. The kind of quiet where you can finally hear your own rage, bubbling under the grief. There was this moment, maybe 2 weeks after the receipt, where I stared at my reflection and didn't recognize the man looking back. My eyes looked tired. My mouth was flat. My wedding ring felt like a handcuff. That's when it hit me, I'd been mourning a marriage that already died. I just didn't get the memo. That's also when something began to shift inside me. Not violently. Not overnight. But slowly. A steady flicker of clarity, lit by every missed text, every lie, every time she smiled at Connor and forgot I existed. I wasn't going to confront her in tears. I wasn't going to shout. I was going to leave. But not quietly. I needed her to feel it, the way I felt it. Not just the loss, but the moment she realized she lost me. And so, I began to plan. Not for revenge that would make me a villain. But for closure that would make me whole. It didn't happen overnight, this desire for revenge. At first, all I wanted was to understand. I kept thinking maybe I had misunderstood, that Amelia's distance was stress-related or circumstantial. But when the evidence started stacking up, covert hotel receipts, late-night calls that went silent when I walked in, the way she smiled more at her secretary than she ever did at me, I stopped chasing answers. I started planning outcomes. That was the day I stopped being the loyal husband and became a strategist. I created a folder on my laptop titled, Backup Docs, encrypted, of course. Inside it, I cataloged everything. Screenshots of late-night messages Amelia accidentally left open on her tablet, copies of work invoices billed to the company but clearly used for personal getaways, blurry pictures of her brushing Connor's collar at the office Christmas party, thinking no one noticed. But I did. A friend of mine from college, now a reputable divorce attorney, agreed to help me quietly. We met at a dive bar where nobody knew our names. Over 2 beers, I laid out the situation. Don't just leave, he advised. Build a case. Document everything. Hit her where it stings, image and finance. The prenup was our golden ticket. I'd signed it thinking she needed security. But there was a clause I hadn't considered, public misconduct triggered a payout. Emotional betrayal wasn't enough, but humiliation in front of shareholders, stakeholders, and the media? That was grounds for a clean break, with compensation. So, I began planting seeds. I befriended a junior staffer on Amelia's team, just enough to hear whispers. I started copying Amelia's calendar into a private log, noting when her executive retreats conveniently matched Connor's absences. I even synced her iCloud briefly, once, just long enough to back up location data from a weekend she claimed to be in Toronto. She wasn't. She was at a vineyard in Napa. And Connor? Same pin. Every night, I rehearsed it. Not rage. Not pain. Precision. I wanted her to feel what I had felt, invisible. Erased. Irrelevant. The final piece came to me while brushing my teeth, ridiculous, I know. But the idea landed. What if I handed her the divorce papers at the party? My birthday. Her big night. Her precious PR-perfect quarterly celebration. The same night she chose to toast her secretary instead of her husband. A man she once promised forever to. I ran the scenario 100 times. No drama. No shouting. Just one envelope. One moment. One devastating shift of power. I reached out to my lawyer to finalize everything in advance. I wanted the paperwork legally airtight and dated just right. I even had him invite someone from a press syndicate, an old contact who owed me a favor, to accidentally capture the moment. I booked a tailor. A photographer. I wrote my one sentence. Since you're celebrating everyone but me tonight, I thought I'd return the favor, with this. Then I practiced saying it without flinching. I didn't sleep much the night before. I just stared at the ceiling and repeated the same question over and over. How do you punish someone who never noticed they hurt you? You take their biggest moment, and turn it into yours. I didn't sleep the night before. Not because I was nervous, though, maybe, I was. Not because I had doubts, I'd had those weeks ago and settled them. I couldn't sleep because I was ready. Too ready. The kind of alertness that only comes when you've reached a point of no return. The envelope sat on the nightstand, thick with finality. Sealed in matte white with my signature across the back in clean, bold strokes. I had gone over every line in the divorce filing like it was a strategy document. And in a way, it was. Legal revenge. Emotionally calculated. Everything done quietly, professionally. Just like Amelia preferred. This time, the control would be mine. The party was held at the Fairmont Grand Ballroom, glass, gold, and subtle overcompensation. She chose it. It screamed opulence without having to raise its voice. Amelia always knew how to send a message through aesthetics. I arrived 20 minutes early. She hated when I was late, so I made a point to be early now, just to remind myself that I could. I wore the dark suit she once said made me look like the future of Mad Men. I didn't smile at that memory. I just adjusted my cufflinks and walked in. Guests buzzed like bees around champagne. Investors, board members, media liaisons. The usual suspects. I nodded, shook hands. They looked at me like I was still part of Amelia's empire, not knowing I had already signed the severance in the form of divorce papers. She spotted me near the corner of the bar. "Ethan," she said, floating over like a polished queen. "God, you look good tonight." You'd think that would sting. It didn't. Not anymore. "You look powerful," I replied, and meant it. She did. Hair sculpted, posture regal, smile weaponized. She always played the part. "I have a surprise tonight," she whispered, sliding her hand onto my chest. "You'll be proud." "I bet you do," I thought. "I bet he's part of it too." I let her think she had the upper hand. Let her sip from the glass of self-satisfaction. It was sweeter that way. An hour later, the lights dimmed and Amelia took the stage. "Tonight," she began, her voice amplified and reverent, "we're celebrating not just business growth, but human growth. And one particular person has been instrumental to that journey." The crowd leaned in. I already knew what was coming. I braced myself anyway. She turned to her right, Connor walked up, grinning like he'd won something permanent. To my executive assistant turned operations lead, Connor Vale, she said. You've redefined loyalty, intelligence, and partnership. The applause was loud. Too loud. I watched faces cheer. Watched Connor soak it in like a plant leaning towards sunlight. Watched Amelia beam at him in a way she hadn't looked at me in months. And still, I stood there. Steady. As the applause quieted, I walked forward. Slowly. Intentionally. Not to interrupt, but to arrive exactly when I was supposed to. I climbed the small steps to the stage and leaned in close. Since you're celebrating everyone but me tonight, I said quietly, I thought I'd bring something of my own. I handed her the envelope. She blinked. Took it with a confused laugh, like maybe I'd written a poem or bought her a car. Her smile cracked the moment she opened it. I watched her eyes scan the header, petition for dissolution of marriage. She swallowed. Blinked twice. Read deeper. Then looked up at me, as if she couldn't believe it. Ethan, she said, voice low, tight with shock. What is this? Divorce papers, I said. Calm. Clear. No emotion. Just the truth. Connor was still grinning like an idiot until Amelia's expression turned pale. Then he took a step back, realizing he was no longer in a celebration, but a reckoning. The guests began to murmur. People turned. Phones lifted discreetly. You're doing this here, she hissed. You did this here, I replied. I'm just responding in kind. Her hand clutched the papers like they might catch fire. This is vindictive. This is overdue. I didn't mean. You meant everything, I cut her off. Every cancelled dinner. Every lie about your weekend trips. Every night I sat alone while you were building more than just a company with him. She went stiff. You're making a mistake, she whispered. No, I said. I made the mistake when I kept forgiving you while you made space for someone else in our marriage. And with that, I turned to the crowd, offered a nod, and stepped down from the stage. Let her stand there, exposed beneath the spotlight she had built for herself. The whispers grew louder. Her investors, her board, even the press, all of them watching as the powerful CEO was reminded she wasn't invincible. Outside, the night was cool. I walked to the curb and waited for the car I had booked, an exit strategy in every sense. One final look over my shoulder, Amelia standing near the ballroom entrance, clutching the envelope, trying to act composed, but unable to hide the cracks forming at the edges of her perfect frame. She had power. But tonight, I had the last word. And it didn't need to be spoken. It's strange how quiet freedom feels. Not triumphant. Not euphoric. Just, still. Like the silence after a storm you didn't realize had lasted years. After the party, I checked into a modest hotel on the edge of the city and slept for 12 uninterrupted hours. No morning meetings. No pretending. No eyes watching me with veiled disappointment. Just me, a worn journal, and the kind of silence that wasn't lonely, just honest. The headlines did their job. My lawyer had them prepped to go live if anything at the party slipped out of control. I didn't want revenge to be messy. I just wanted it visible. Tangible. A mirror held up to what she had become. I heard through mutual contacts that Connor resigned the next day. Disappeared from the firm's website like he was never there. Amelia released a one-paragraph statement, personal transitions, deep regret, focus on leadership. PR speak for, I got caught. I didn't gloat. Honestly, I pitied her. Because I remember who she used to be. The woman who danced barefoot in our living room after her first round of funding came through. The woman who once cried because she couldn't believe someone like me believed in her. She didn't just cheat on me. She abandoned herself long before she betrayed me. I moved to Portland 2 months later. Smaller city, slower pace. I opened a boutique consulting firm that helps struggling startups find their footing. Nothing flashy. Just meaningful. I take walks now. Cook for myself. I even adopted a golden retriever named Murphy, who insists I throw the same damn stick 70 times a day, and I do. I'm dating someone now. Her name's Lila. She's a trauma nurse. Wears her heart like armor, brave, bruised, and still beating. She didn't ask about my past until I was ready to tell her. And when I did, she didn't flinch. Just held my hand and said, "You deserved better." She doesn't complete me. She meets me. And that's enough. Amelia reached out once, an email I never responded to. There's nothing left to say. I don't hate her. I don't love her. I understand her. And that's enough, too. I think people imagine revenge as fire and rage. But mine came wrapped in silence. In grace. In walking away while the world watched her try to explain why I finally stopped standing in her shadow. Some ghosts don't haunt, they teach. She taught me the price of invisibility. And I taught her that even the quiet ones know how to walk away loud.